Hey everyone, Hans here. Everyone is doing well. Today I felt like talking a little bit about a certain dichotomy, and I suppose thus far I have only talked about false dichotomies, but there are real ones as well, of course. And I find that the real ones are very simple to recognize is that when there is an opposite presented to the natural, that is the true dichotomy as far as I can tell. The what you might call civilized, the domesticated, truly setting itself off against the natural, the artificial setting itself up against the natural. And that resistance against nature is mm, is always the creation of the dichotomy too. Because nature is nature, right? It always has been. It's those that would resist the natural order or the natural chaos of things who are the ones that always will create these dichotomies. So which one is it that I want to present? Well, as far as the natural goes, womanhood is something I want to talk about. That is by request by a lady, a wonderful lady. And what I like to call, I suppose, is perhaps a bit of a cheeky term, is you have the woman and you have the femlet. The femlet is not exactly a friendly term and it's not meant to be, because it speaks about someone with a female body that is still broken in some fashion. Like they are beings with a female body that have never achieved womanhood. Whether they are able to or not remains in the middle. They are past a certain amount of years where a female should have reached womanhood. They're past it, and by extent, they're femlets. How are they to be recognized? When they actually try to make it a point that it is okay to be a femlet. They call themselves many names that wise white people would not give them the name of. Whatever they name themselves, forget it. And I'm pretty certain that those who know a bit about society, know a bit about the world, know a bit about nature, comprehend who I'm on about. I do not need to be specific there, and I do not need to give them by their own taken names, because their behavior speaks for itself. So, the idea in society is that your typical femlet hates man. They hate men, so to say. And you will see a lot of vitriol, a lot of venom, toxicity come from these femlets, which they say that their victims are the ones who spread it, right? But no, of course not. And we also know this. And their hatred for men, however, specifically white men, is that, shall one put it, this hatred has a purpose, because they do something, a healthy, strong white man does something that a femlet will despise above all else, and that is to protect his women, be they girls or be they grown-ups. That is why they come after men, because that protection that men offer for good women, for young girls, is something that prevents them from harming those who confront the femlet with being a broken being. Does that make sense? It's not hatred for men, it's the hatred for women that a femlet harbors. but they have to get past the men to harm the women. How do they? And you might say, well, femlet, can a femlet stand against, can a femlet harm a healthy, strong white woman? It would be difficult, all things considered. But it's not the femlets themselves who grab up, uh, what would you call that? Who might grab a bottle, let's say, and try to smash it over the head of a white woman. No, a femlet uses others for that. Fill in the blank who, right? And what is the purpose behind all of that? What makes it anti-white to be a femlet is, by extent, that a woman is something that is a female who is going to be more beautiful than they are. It's going to be wiser. It's going to be more intelligent. It's going to be just more valuable in terms of skills, experience, wisdom, knowledge, and just most important, or one of the most important parts, sense and good health, good hearts. Femlets, above all else, despise that the most in woman. Or that's how I see it. Can I add something to that? I suppose also giving birth. A femlet may give birth to a poor being brought into this world to be abused, to be mistreated. A woman, however, will nourish her child, even before it is born, right? You want to see a femlet who is about to bring life into the world, you can be dead certain that she is going to smoke, she's going to drink, she's going to do drugs, she's going to complain about that she is enslaved already, etc., etc. And that might actually be the experience that they may speak about that. Yeah, what they call enslavement is basically just being responsible. Being responsible they experience as being enslaved. Can you imagine how wretched you have to be? But a woman, she will embrace that responsibility, may not even think about it. And women raise their offspring and continue, the people that they are from. And before anyone might actually have something to say about, what about the women who have offspring with non-whites? Well, no, that's also a form of being a femlet, because they actively give birth to a being that is going to be trapped between two races of man, and it's going to be trapped between two races, and is going to feel dislodged from every being that they come in contact with. And I'm not saying that these children are to be blamed for that, although a lot, all of them are victims, but many of these raceless people will become victimizers too, right? That's part of the anti-white ploy. They will blame whites for their birth, and the femlet that brought them into this world definitely has her part in that, right? Even though wiser, raceless people will understand that they were always intended to be meant as a weapon, a genetic bomb of a kind, if you will, towards whites. And I've met many. I've met people who were caught between two races, and it's difficult, but on a few occasions I've been able to broach that topic with them, because it's very sensitive, right? And the pain they are in is just astounding. I'm not. Oh, and should I have them here with me? I suppose. But they are in a lot of pain, spiritual pain. Some of them physical, I think, because they have all these forms of afflictions and diseases that you just don't see in someone who is just from a certain stock, and that's it. Uh, and yeah, in the mind, it's they do not even know. They could not even begin to know who to be loyal to. And then you might say, well, what about all the racist people? No, yeah, it's for the simple reason. I'm actually going on a bit of a tangent here. I apologize if it's no, never mind. I'm not apologizing. This is something that also needs to be talked about more because I want those. I want preemptive protection. It's like these people are supposed to be born in two separate, as what would you call that? As I see it right now, is that a raceless person is basically two individuals molded together into one, and it is not a happy coming together, from what I have seen. And if they come at you and say it's wonderful or whatever, you pretty sure they're lying. I'm pretty sure they're trying to harm you in any way. Could be the anti-white raceless. I'm just throwing that in there. So where was I now with this? Yeah, just in the mind also. They have no one to be truly loyal to, and all the raceless people, no, it's just a mess. Even if it's like a similar combination, if you will. Let's say someone from African descent has a child with someone from Asian descent, let's say China or whatever, and you have a second couple like that. Those two, those children from the separate couples are still not alike. You might think so, but not really, because the molding, if you will, is like. I mean, I really dislike to put it in percentages because that's an unhealthy way of looking at it. But just to keep it easy for now is, let's say that the one child is like 50-50 of both the races, and then the other child from the other couple is like 75-25. And it doesn't matter which or what way it is, right? And those two children, you might say, well, maybe they can create a new race, a new stock, what have you. No, because the mold from those two would still be something along the lines of it could be anything really. It's like 60-40, and until maybe one, in certain instances, the genetics of one completely take over, but there's going to be forever be that trace of the mold in there, and that is speaking very positively about it. And I also should mention as well is that it involves also that they have no atmosphere on this planet that they are truly part of. White man is part of temperate climates, if you will. The Africans are more from what do you call it? A sort of savanna climate. Makes sense. The yeah, I'm struggling to find the names of all kinds of climates that you have. I suppose desert people come from the desert, savanna people come from the savanna, forest people come from the forest, jungle people come from the jungle, and so forth and so on. I think I'm making a point there. If you combine, two stocks and have this mold, you do not end up with the situation where this child is going to be able to survive in two climates. No, they won't be able to survive in any. That is where civilization began, at least according to some. I think it's a fair point to make, because what does civilization offer? It offers comfort. It offers comfort, and you give it enough generations, that comfort is going to be increasingly pursued. All loyalty towards one's own people, all spirituality that the original stocks of that this lineage, if you will, this line comes from, the spirituality from both is just fizzled away, and all starts taking place. And what you get instead is, well, sort of, either you get an organized religion that is rooted in a zealotry that has a lot to do with escaping reality, and other than that, I suppose just nihilism and the pursuit of petty pleasures, because that's all there is left at the end of the day. Yeah. And you give that enough time, you see a deterioration within the civilized. I suppose you could say it's what one might see today if they have an eye for it. And suddenly you see a rise in femlets and manlets, and the vicious cycle has come full. Except then at that point it's done. Then once that civilization falls, all those involved they will go where their comforts will go, which is nowhere. And it has happened in our history before, This isn't new. But yeah, coming back to the initial point of the hatred that femlets harbor for women, is also, that white women perpetuate the white race, for obvious reasons. They have the power of giving life, and a healthy white woman will give life to a healthy child of her people. End of story. There are no exceptions to it, and there are no healthy people who would voluntarily create these beings that are just trapped in their own body, so to say. Two spirits trapped in a single body, if there is even a spirit still in there at all. And it's not one or the other, it could be both. That I leave in the middle. It's not for me to decide that at any rate. I'm just going by what is observed, and by what I'm asked to talk about in this instance. But I would rather like also to speak about something else, something that might actually be as harmful, and it's this trend, the trend wife or the trad wife thing that you hear about, which is basically also femlets. Actually, they're just less worse, if that makes sense. These types are basically those who bind themselves to a man, or a male, actually I should say, because a healthy man doesn't want someone like that. It's females who kind of fetishize being a woman. Like they emulate it, but it's a fetish thing almost. Like they'll have their pretty dress and their pretty hair, and they will actually, live up to the stereotype that femlets tend to put forth, is like being chained in the kitchen. We have all heard that one, right? And just good for cooking and cleaning, and for the remainder of that, just be locked up in a house, that sort of stuff. And now, crazily enough, you have these femlets who will start pushing that. And they also tend to be followers of religions that aren't from their people, which is also, as far as I see it, a sign of self-loathing, and I guess just wanting to be dominated. I do believe that sort of domination, though, is truly wanting to be a slave even. And what healthy woman wants to be a slave? A broodmare for an ideology. Those poor children. But again, it seems like it may be the opposite of the first kind of melon that I brought up, but it's not really. It's still the same gobbledygook, if you will. And least maybe less. I suppose the motivation there is the biggest issue. The motivation seems to be just having a comfy life for oneself in avarice, and notice the word comfort again, and just wanting to be handed everything and in return just surrender oneself, one's spirit to some parasitic membrane, if you will. Now, what is then a healthy woman? Well, I would say it's pretty simple. It's a woman who loves herself, happy with herself, while still understanding that there may be things about herself she has to work on, right? That's part of it, accepting that you're imperfect and that you have to improve yourself on a daily basis. That is also for men, but we're talking about females and women here, right? So to realize that self-improvement is important, but to still love oneself and to want to really relish in the ability of woman to create life and to nourish that life, and accepting that she is the half of a whole that she can form with a man who will give her those children. It's romantic, isn't it? A lot healthier sounding to me. It's also having I suppose, wanting protection, but not for oneself alone. Like actually willing to offer protection as much as receiving it. That is also something typical for women. And to demand, but to reciprocate. Or I suppose better to ask than to demand. A femlet will demand this and demand that. A healthy woman will ask. And even it maybe seems similar, but like a femlet will demand protection, a woman will ask for protection and encourage men, actually, now that I mention it, to offer that protection. Oh, you're such a big strong dude, you won't mind standing up for me, would you now? And then a healthy man technically should be like, yeah. A femlet's like, you need to do this and you need to do that, and my this and my that and my feelings and emotions and blah blah blah. And a man will look at that as like, yeah, there are actually women that I have to look out for, bye bye. Manlets on the other hand, which is like the male counterpart, they'll come in droves one day, but they're not there to protect the being. They're there to protect physical attributes that they may perhaps lay their hands on, which is kind of creepy and disgusting in my eyes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's my take on that, and I'm kind of forced to close off because this camera I'm using is about to give out. I'm gonna go take a hike and talk to you all soon. What can I say? This is by request that I make this. I hope it's interesting. I would really appreciate if there are ladies who would comment underneath. This sounds making sense, because this is something that the women, I would like to see the women pile in on and actually kind of take hold of this topic. Protect your womanhood, The men will be there if it gets too rough, if you will. That's that. With that said, you all have a good one and bye bye.